welcome to the first aggression session in our series. Today's topic is keeping fitness healthy with the four speakers you see on screen, who, I'll just get you all to introduce yourselves if you don't mind. So start with you, George.
Hi, everyone. If I can manage to unmute my mic. My name is George Mycock. I am actually someone who is it alumni? I'm an alumni from Durham University. I did the sports, physical activity and exercise Bachelor's of Arts. I'm the founder of MyoMinds, which is a mental health organization looking to demystify mental health and make sharing mainstream in the exercising community. I have lived experience with poor mental health and eating disorders, and I'm here to hopefully talk about exercise and how to keep fitness healthy.
Thank you. And Leah?
I'll try not to just literally repeat myself. I'm Leah. I co-run a campaign called Worked Out with my co-campaigner Carly. We started it as a result. I had recently tried to return to exercise after having an eating disorder and was really fearful that it would trigger my eating disorder. But really wanted to go to classes. So I basically approached Carly and told her about my eating disorder history. And after that, we had so many conversations about how it isn't spoken about in the fitness industry. And yet it's such a huge issue for trainers and people that actually engage in the gym. So we kind of turned our conversation and our experience into a campaign. And we, try and go into gyms online to different organizations and just give people the confidence to talk about it and kind of acknowledge that it's okay to talk about it. And then in my kind of personal life as well, I do a lot of talking about eating disorders, particularly anorexia. And just try and sort of open up the conversation using the experience.
Thank you. Luke?
Hiya, I'm Luke. I'm a strength and conditioning coach in Stoke. I'm a competitive international strongman. I've been a sufferer with depression, anxiety, suicide attempts throughout my entire life. But the last 4 years, I would say I've gone through a kind of spiritual awakening, and I'm in a much better place now. And one of the reasons that I got into the gym was it helped me with my mental health. And one of the reasons I got into training, being a coach, was to be able to help people not only with their physical health, but their mental health as well. So that's pretty much me.
Hi, I'm Lara Becker. I am the host of the Keep Smiling podcast. So due to my previous experiences with anorexia nervosa, anxiety, depression, I've now been motivated to create insightful content regarding psychological health across social media, across YouTube, across all your standard platforms. I'm also a full-time student in Cardiff Metropolitan University studying sport and exercise science with hopes to progress within sports psychology in the future. I guess overall, my motivation is just to encourage individuals to live a healthy, positive lifestyle. And, fitness has been a massive component for myself in the sense that it's just provided me with so much confidence. Initially started with long distance running and then transitioned into strength training. Both I feel has been massively impactful positively towards my mentality. And it's just been such a huge passion of mine.
Perfect. So thank you very much for those intros. So let's get straight into it. So the first question we were sent in today that I'd like to ask you all is, what impact has stigma had on your healthy lifestyle? So is there anyone that would like to start?
I can go first if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I would say mine is possibly a bit controversial. So I'd love to hear some of the other panel members' opinions on this and see if especially if anyone disagrees with me. But the thing that was difficult for me in particular was the fact that the healthy lifestyle that's taking on that kind of persona of being someone who lifts weights, eats healthy, or whatever, eats in this certain way, acts in this certain way, because that's portrayed as always positive. It's only ever good. It can never go too far. It can never be an issue. That's where I got wrapped up in problems, because I have had experiences with exercise addiction. I've had eating disorders, and I'm not diagnosed with, but I've experienced kind of body dysmorphia. And I think a lot of the reason why I didn't initially get help was because if anyone questioned it, I was like, what are you talking about? Exercise is great. I'm eating like all these like really, I'm eating loads of fruit and veg and stuff, and that's all great. Everyone says it's amazing. So it took me ages, a really long time, to actually recognize that I had an issue or I had a problem, because of that stigma, the kind of, I suppose, positive stigma around this lifestyle. I wondered, does anyone else have that experience, or does anyone disagree with me?
I was going to just say that it's encouraged, like a lot of disordered eating, disordered compulsive exercise. It's encouraged, it's normalized. I think that increased kind of during lockdown, when it became normal suddenly for people to be working out multiple times a day, just because it was more easily accessible online. So to be kind of navigating an illness in an area that encourages it and deems it okay is really, really difficult. And I think as a woman growing up, that was just sort of one of the things that made me have a issue with food and exercise, because most of the marketing around dieting is targeted at women. We're the ones that are like sort of, we have to strive to be a certain type of woman, and often that is one very specific type of woman. Like my mother, for example, lived a very diet culture life. That was her norm. That was passed down onto me just naturally. So without even like internalizing anything that was going on around me, by the age of like 10, I already knew like how I wanted my body to look, who I wanted it to look like. And I believed that the only way to do that was by restricting my food and exercising in a way that hurt. And that's without even, any other environmental factors impacting on my overall mental health. So yeah, I think the problem it lies within so much of our culture, which is really changing, but really slowly. And it's been the norm for such a long time for us to be on diets and for us to be exercising in certain ways, and for the language to be around pushing and, all that horrible language about shredding and all of this, that's our norm. It comes out of people's mouths without even considering it, without even thinking about it. And challenging that is really hard because it's such a strong norm.
I can totally relate in terms of the environmental thing. Prior to, now establishing a healthy lifestyle, when I was initially going into my downfall towards anorexia, towards the disordered eating side of things, exercise addiction was also a combination of that. And it's a tool that I mechanically use just to enforce the weight loss and things. And I was pushed into modeling at the age of 14 or 15. And so I had these positive, like a positive reinforcement into kind of guiding me into telling myself that this is okay, you can do this, like this is a good thing that you're doing, and giving me this reinforcement, and therefore put me in front of a camera, traveling up to Birmingham for all these shoots and things. So obviously it wasn't that good of an approach to undergo. But similarly, when you discuss about diet culture and things, I think that's a huge perspective, in the sense that consistently now in the 21st century, specifically women, but also men, they've been targeted in the sense that fitness and your relationship with your body has to be in a way where you're depriving, where you're, where you're having to strive towards something that is going to be uncomfortable. And the sense of empowerment, the sense of strength, the sense of feeling positive and, uplifted within your skin is undermined because it's solely focused on the exterior. And we're supposed to have such a fixated mentality towards how we look rather than how we perform, how we feel, how we can evolve. And, so much so within the gym, I'm not necessarily going there with a constructive goal to change the way that I look. I'm going there because last year, going there because it was positive in terms of our mental health. It allowed me an escape for my mentality. It allowed me this environmental change for me to, gain a sense of endorphins and make myself happy. Whereas, you have so many other people like lessening the fact that you're there because you don't have a physical goal, or because I don't want to step on stage, or because I don't want to, as you say, use the terms shred, cut, bulk. I'm just there for the enjoyment of it. And often not many people understand that. You just want to progress your form, your performance, and have that as the focus. Whereas I think the misconstructed mentality is that you have to have a physical goal, otherwise it's not deemed valuable enough.
Yeah, I'm sorry to kind of ask a question here, but I'm really interested, Luke, in your opinion or like your experience with the physique side being a strongman. That's not necessarily a physique sport, but what was there that pressure there with you? Like, was it like, I think with most people we think of that pressure of having to look a certain way, but when you're in a strength sport, is that still there, or is it not so much?
With strength sports are like, particularly strongman and powerlifting, it's like the other end of the spectrum. It's used as an excuse for a lot of people to overeat, to have no control over what they put in their mouth, because as far as 90% of the strength population are concerned, mass moves mass. The heavier you are, the stronger you are. So you can see with a lot of people who are in strength sports that they have literally, men and women, that they have gone into that sport because they're already quite overweight. They're not happy with themselves at all. They don't feel like they're enough. So they latch onto this idea, do you know what, there's this arena, there's this area where it doesn't matter what I look like. Actually, the bigger I am, the better it is. So I'll go into there. So they've almost picked that niche, that area to go into, rather than, the people. Ultimately, for me, what it all boils down to is anybody who does any kind of fitness to an extreme, or any kind of eating to an extreme, is not happy with themselves. They don't feel enough. And I'm sure we can all identify with that. I know that I personally got into the gym and everything else for being bullied at school and all the rest of it because I didn't feel enough. So going to the gym, I would be bigger, I would be stronger, I would have this persona. So they ultimately, people don't feel good enough, and I think that's the root cause of it. And if you can sort that out and you can look at that and address that, then I think everything else would fall into place. But yeah, it's kind of, rather than people, some people go and are bothered about what they look like and then do extreme forms of eating that way and training. But then the strength world is like the polar opposite of that, really. There's no control. It doesn't matter. It's almost amongst strongmen, it's a badge of honor how many tens of thousands of calories you can eat a day, and if you've got a sleep apnea machine. If you haven't got a sleep apnea machine and you don't eat 15,000 calories a day, you can't possibly be a strongman. So that's the kind of extreme it is. And
that's like, listening from someone who isn't a strongman, like that's almost sounds like I understand because I've been in like the fitness, like deep into those fitness worlds and taken on those ideas of like, you have to do these extremes to be a proper whatever it is you are. But the idea like you have to have a machine to help you breathe when you're sleeping is like a badge of honor. Almost. It sounds like what, like how? But it does it when you're in it, it's so, it just makes sense almost, doesn't it? Because it's just
it's completely it's completely normal.
It's similar with an extreme side of bodybuilding. I don't know if anyone's heard of Jordan Peters, coached by JP. He's been a friend of mine is actually one of his clients, and he says how he has to use this apparatus just because his chest, he's so huge. He's built so much muscle mass, but that isn't a concern. That is a reward. That's a victory. And it's funny how, you know, in a way, I know this is probably going a little bit out of the context, but this is why when I was at my worst, my anorexia, my victory, for example, was one example when my blood pressure was taken, the equipment that they used couldn't fit around the circumference of my arm. So in the end, they had to use, in the end, they had to use a child's, the one that fits the child, because the circumference of my arm was so small, because it was just absolutely minuscule. And even though that's a huge concern, I took that as a massive victory, because I was like, I've achieved something. Like I've been the best at my anorexia. So it's bizarre how often some people can disassociate to what their health is and just what they can kind of categorize as a victory or as a win.
Yeah, I can completely identify with that, because when I was at my biggest, taking my blood pressure, I'd have to use a leg one to get it around my arm, and I'd be there like, massive kind of thing. But even though my blood pressure was through the roof, it didn't matter, because I had absolutely massive arms that were bigger than most people's legs. So it's definitely extremes without a shadow of a doubt.
Smashing stuff. I had a question on something Leah said, which was, how do you think lockdown has affected sort of your relationship between training and mental health? Like you say, a lot of people are now finding time to train more. Do you necessarily think that's a good thing, a bad thing, or
I really panicked when we went into lockdown, because ironically, even though I'm a PT, I actually hate the gym. I never go to the gym. I basically love classes, anything outside of the gym. So much so that my whole exam was just a joke, because I hated being in the gym. And so I go to F45 in Bristol. So it's a massive community here. That's where I thrive. That sense of seeing people, them knowing my history, so that if I suddenly start over exercising, people can step in and have a chat with me about that. And so when we went into lockdown, I was like, well, I don't exercise on my own. I don't even really like exercise. It's all the other stuff that comes with it. And the thought of kind of exercising on my kitchen floor was pretty horrific. But actually, I did do it. I didn't sort of love it. I still don't love working out at home. I get different benefits than I get in the community. But actually, I guess parts of what I got from being in person lived on to a certain extent online. I only ever really went to classes of people I knew. I didn't really try many others. And I do my own classes now online as well. And there is connection there. It's different. And it'll never be like in real life for me anyway. But yeah, I had to be really careful to continue to check in with myself, because everyone was online advocating their workouts. You know, we could work out so easily and so quickly, multiple times a day with multiple people. And you know, you could sustain an injury from home. No one would know about it. You could be really poor mental health. No one would know about it. And it's still limited in the gym. You know, no one really knows what's going on in everyone's lives. But actually physically seeing someone and having that kind of communication and that connection is more of a difference than what it can be online. so yeah, I very much in the first lockdown kind of sat down and said, okay, what do I normally do in a week, movement wise? And I was like, I'm not going to do any more than that. And I had to like promise myself that I wouldn't do more because I was bored. Like I was unemployed at the time. I was anxious. There was like literally nothing else to do. And if you sat on your phone for 10 minutes, you felt so nervous and like pressurized into going and doing a workout that it was like a full-time job just trying to counteract that. And give yourselves reasonings why you didn't need to work out all day and restrict your food. And I think like a year on, as we're coming out of lockdown, it's now flipped to you've got to prepare yourselves to come out of lockdown because you've been inside for a year. You've got to work out more, you've got to eat less to look good for A, summer, and B, like the end of June. So it's a constant battle. It is a constant battle.
Yeah, I resonate with the idea of changing. I think lockdown for me has changed my perspective on exercise, just because I suppose you're forced into different behaviors around it, and because of that, I suppose lockdown's been good and bad. It's been bad because I think Laura mentioned earlier, the fact that the gym is a place that I can go to, that I love going to the gym. I love being in Strength Asylum, which is where me and Luke train, or just being in any gym in general, because I think for one, it's just it's a space where I understand it. I get what's going on. I know like there's never going to be a machine that I don't understand what it is, or like I just get it. So I feel so comfortable. I feel so kind of like, this is like, I know what I'm doing. I'm not the biggest guy or the strongest, but like I know what's going on here, and I get that sense of like this is okay. I know what I'm doing. And also, like a big issue with my mental health is the fact that I put a lot of my self-worth into my accomplishments or what I'm achieving, and especially within the short term. So the gym for me, if I'm having a bad time, it's a little win. I can just go to the gym and spend 30 minutes there, like whatever, and just come back and be like, okay, I achieved something. Like it just makes me feel like I've won something. But then, like I say, there's also the good side that being forced outside of that has kind of forced me to reassess how exercise plays a role in my life. And I think especially before lockdown and years before that, I was using it as a way to hold my life together, in the fact that if I can't work out, if I can't do it, if I can't train, then everything else kind of falls apart underneath it. And now I'm more prepared now when gyms open up. Although don't get me wrong, I'm crapping myself. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, but I'm scared about it because I'm like, I've definitely put on weight, or like, my arms aren't as big, or, or whatever, I've got to train next to Luke's probably going to be in there, and I've got to stand next to him. And, there's that fear of going back. But I feel like I'm more prepared now to be able to be like, this is going to be something that adds to my life, like adds to my day, rather than something that's going to hold it together.
George, can I ask, sorry, quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find that in lockdown you've now, so for example, I've just like been like, actually I've walked more. So I've kind of, my balance of like, I would always choose to go to a class to the gym over like going for a walk most of the time. Whereas now, like I would choose to go for a walk rather than do an online class. I don't know if that's like, or anyone, like if that kind of like balance has changed a bit in terms of the sorts of things that you have done.
Yeah. Go on, Luke.
No, George. Sorry, the question was aimed at you.
I was just going to say that I've started doing stuff that I enjoy more than stuff that I felt like I need to do. Like I used to do exercises just because I know they'll make my like arm look, that my biceps look bigger, or my forearms look bigger, or make a certain part of my body. I'm in love with bodybuilding. That was always my thing. I wanted to like have that kind of physique. So I used to do exercises purely because that the effect that they're going to have on my body. And now I've started doing exercises purely because I think they're fun. and because I enjoy doing them. Like I do like kettlebell snatches and kettlebell cleans and jerks and stuff. And I know they're not necessarily going to, like, you know, they're not the best for hypertrophy, so to speak, but you know, they're just, I like doing them, so I do them for that. I would say that those are the differences I've had.
Yeah, I've at the beginning of lockdown, I tore my tricep off and it needed to be operated on, so I couldn't train properly anyway, even if there had been gyms. But one thing, I mean, I did the atypical thing, overate, drank, and I don't normally drink. Wasn't doing any kind of training at all. Eventually had the operation. And then was able to train a little bit, but not as much as I normally would, or the weights that I normally would. And what I found is running. Now, 12 months ago, if I'd said to myself, right, you'll be running 20K a week, I'd have been like, shut up, no way. I couldn't even walk down the street without getting a back bump. But now I'm doing that, and I love it. I genuinely love it. So it's been good in that sense, because it's like you've just said, George, I'm doing running not because I feel like I have to, because it will make an impact on the way I look or my health, which, you know, it does help my health, but I'm doing it ultimately because I enjoy it, because I'm actually like, yeah, it's just, for me, it's almost like a form of meditation, and that's why I feel I enjoy it. But yeah, there's definitely been the opportunity to change the focus, to readjust perspectives on things, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah,
I can totally relate to that, in the sense that fitness for me primarily has just been that enjoyment element, and has been that escape from life, in a sense that I will hook myself to my desk for hours on end, and the gym or training is my playtime, is my exciting time. I get to listen to obnoxiously loud, like 20 what's it called, early 20 emo songs or indie songs, and just like be in my little bubble, listen to Fall Out Boy, whoever I want to do. And it's my opportunity just to release the tension, release the stress. I absolutely miss the gym fundamentally because of the environment, in the sense that a lot of my training I do is individual, but you don't realize how much the little conversations as you enter, saying hi to the PTs, that little community, you know, having a little chat between sets, you know, granted, a workout can sometimes go on for an additional hour if you're a bit more talkative that day. But I find so much value in that, because it's that connection, and it's that sense of connectedness and the community element of it, which you didn't, I don't think I really appreciated how much value I took from that, you know, instead, since we got into a very isolated state. I've always been very flexible with my training, in the sense that I still ran quite a lot, even though, well, I was in my prime and then not as much so, but I still ran every now and then, still did a lot long walks. You know, I've got the dogs, but then I think lockdown had just inspired me to continue that creativity. Very much got into calisthenics and just enjoying having that relationship with my body. You know, I don't know how many thousands of blooming pull-ups I've done over lockdown, but it's just allowed me to engage with my body in a way that gives me even more of a respect. You know, I don't have that much weight. My repetitions have exceeded, you know, the levels of repetitions that I'd like to do per exercise, but there we are. You've got to do what you got to do in time. But I am looking forward. But I guess I've just tried to make the best adjustments possible during the circumstances.
It's funny. One thing I just want to comment on there is that, you know, you said how, like, I just want to know if anyone else resonates with this, but for ages, because when I was in that kind of like lifting culture, and I was obsessed with like these like hardcore, like Dorian Yates and like these hardcore bodybuilders. And I love talking to people in the gym. I love it. It's like, you know, we have mutual interest, obviously. Like, you know, even when you're between your sets, you're resting, you're not doing anything anyway. But I used to I would refuse to speak to people. I just wouldn't speak. I would like put my headphones in, like blare it up. If someone tried to speak to me, I'd be like purposefully obnoxious. Like I'm really not a confrontational person at all.
I was initially like that when I had like severe gym anxiety. You know, when I was so anxious and going into the muscle pit, what I used to call it. But then when I got more confident, I think me in the gym is me at my best. Like, that's a happy gal right there. She's pumped full of endorphin. She's confident. She feels empowered. She's between a set. She's performing well. And within reason, I'll talk to people. If I'm like building up to a top set, I'll be plugged in. Like there will be some sort of, you know, 1 rep max song that I've dedicated towards listening to, motivating myself to. So it depends on the training.
Yeah.
But generally, since like my confidence and my like positive reinforcements when the gym has encouraged over time, I will have a chat. But then if I want to do a deadlift, I'm doing a deadlift. I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, well, but because now I am definitely more of a conversationalist in between sets and stuff, and I'll even, you know, I'll take extra rest if I'm enjoying a conversation, because I'm not trying to be a professional bodybuilder or whatever. But it's kind of, I don't want to say funny, because I know in some people's minds it is, you know, if people are still in that, it is a difficult thing to kind of traverse. But it's funny looking back at it now, or kind of seeing it now from this perspective of being a bit more healthy in my mindset around it. But I was like, you know, I made myself do something that I didn't enjoy. I made myself not speak to people and not interact with people that I actually thought were interesting, just because that's what a gym person does. Or like, you know, that's what I thought. If you want to be you want to be the biggest guy in the gym, then you've got to do that. And it's just kind of, yeah, it just made me think about that. And I'm just, yeah, I wonder if anyone else has that experience or something similar to that. But I suppose you said there, Laura, that you have somewhat.
Yeah, I go, obviously when I'm training for a competition, I'll be teeth and smiles and everything, and I'll chat to everybody when I go in. But then when I'm training, it's a case of I'm training and not not really interact. But the way that you seem to be describing it, George, is almost like you turned it into a job, into a chore, something that you felt you had to do. Whereas now it seems you're more of the mind, like you've said, it's something that you enjoy doing. It's an addition to your life and to your daily routine, rather than something that you have to do. And I think that's where it's weird. It's like Leah spoke earlier about not enjoying it, and it's really weird, because like you have to ask yourself, all right, I'm not enjoying it, I don't really want to be there, and I don't want to do it, so why the fuck are you doing it? Do you know what I mean? It's like you're doing it. Who are you doing it for? Because you're not doing it for you. And that's always something that's always something that I'll ask like clients when they come on board is like, why are you doing it? Who is it for? What is it for? And yeah, that's a really important root question, I think, is like, why are you doing it? Because if you're going in and you don't enjoy it and you don't really want to be there, but you are, because, you know, it's almost like, I mean, I suffered with drug addiction that years ago, and it's almost like that. It's getting to the stage where you've had your night out, you've been as high as whatever, you've done whatever you've done, but you're not enjoying it, but you're just doing it because it's an addiction. So you're just doing it because you've got to do it, not because you want to do it. You can sit there in the corner at 4 o'clock in the morning crying like, why am I here? Why have I done this? And it's not almost the same thing. It is exactly the same thing. It's just a different facet. It's not cocaine or it's not heroin. It's the gym. And like Lara mentioned earlier, or you did, George, because it's seen as a positive thing, it's okay, because it's not alcohol abuse or drug abuse or sex addiction or something like that. It's okay to do. But yeah, definitely, if you aren't doing it for you, then there's definitely a fundamental flaw in the reason as to why you're doing it.
Yeah, and there's a like phenomenon that often comes up in the research around exercise addiction, which is there tends to be a transition from what's called a positive reinforcement or positive feedback loop to a negative feedback loop. And the positive feedback loop is basically, I lift weights, it makes me feel good, I want to feel good, so I'm going to do it more. So you want to feel good, so you want to do it more. And then it can transition very easily, and it's just a slight change into a negative feedback loop when it is, I lift weights, makes me feel good. If I stop lifting weights, I'm going to feel bad. So now I need to do it. And it's so subtle, and it's even subtle when I say it. So imagine how difficult it is to unravel that in your head. It's almost impossible. And without, this is why I'm such an advocate for counseling and for talking to people, because talking to people or writing it down or having these conversations is how you unpick that, and how you start to be like, oh, maybe it's because I feel like I need to do it, not because I want to do it. So it's really important that we do talk about it.
So I thought I'd build there on Luke's point, especially which I think he was building on George, about the positive sort of view of this. And why do you think exercise addiction has such a positive view? And what do you think the role of social media has on this?
Social media is literally, it's the devil. To call it the devil's wrong. It does have its positives, but in this particular arena, in the fitness arena, it's absolutely horrific, because people can just post, edit, filter, put up the things that make them look good or make them feel good. Like for example, I trained with Ed and I've done it myself, is you don't post up the sessions where they haven't gone particularly well. You post up the sessions where you've been lifting 300 kilos deadlift for 10 reps, or you've squatted 320 kilos for 8 reps. You post up those videos, but you don't post up the videos that aren't particularly, where the sessions have been substandard or they haven't been heavy, the same as professional bodybuilders do. So people who are watching that think, wow, this guy or these guys go in the gym and every single time it's like that, I need to be like that. And it's the same with the physique as well. These lads and the girls, they post on these pictures where they're sub 10% body fat, tanned, everything's perfect, but they take a load of these pictures and they filter them out and put them out throughout the year. But everybody sees that and thinks, these guys look like this the whole year round. I need to look like that the whole year round. I need to do that. So yeah, it's quite, social media and the fitness industry is quite it's quite bad news. It's toxic. It can be very, very toxic, which is why it's important that that it is put out there and people do share it, that it isn't always a brilliant session and you aren't always lifting heavy weights and you haven't always got a six-pack and you aren't always feeling fantastic or eating. Again, food's the main one. I mean, you look at some people's social media and you would think they eat like clean 100% of the time and everything's absolutely spot on and perfect, but it's not, because they're not going to take a picture of, the chocolate bars or the McDonald's that they've had in between the meals. So yeah, it's quite a toxic arena, I think, and it's hard for people to filter out what is true and what's false.
Yeah, I just want to I was on social media in my teens or whatever, and then when I went into hospital for my eating disorder, I came off social media completely and I was like, I am done with it. I'm not doing it anymore. And it was the first time that I was actually able to zone into what I wanted, because I could actually hear myself think, and it wasn't, I'd looked on Instagram and then suddenly been like, oh, actually what I was going to have for dinner has now changed because I've seen so-and-so is having so-and-so. And so I went off it completely for about 2 years. And then when I came back, I was like, okay, I'm going to come back on, but I have to promise to myself and anyone that follows me that I'm not going to post that my life is incredible, because my life is not incredible. I have incredible moments, but I have really bad moments. And I guess I've gone probably quite the opposite way, in that I end up being quite vulnerable. I often feel quite vulnerable on my Instagram because I share quite a lot, and I share quite personal elements of my recovery and my eating disorder illness as a whole. But I find that anyone that I follow that does similar, that really helps me. So if that's something that can help other people, then that's basically what I'll do. I think I've managed so well to kind of restrict my feed so that it shows me like-minded people and like-minded ideas. And then if I ever go down a rabbit hole, I feel shocked and like, I guess, still naive to the fact that people are still living lifestyles that I lived so many years ago. People are still entrenched in diet culture. Like sometimes I'll go on YouTube to like look at ideas for my classes, and you can't find any videos that aren't like legs, bums and tums, trim your waist. Like who is buying waist trimmers, but they're actually still a thing and people are still selling them and buying them. And I think sometimes because my feed and the people that I surround myself with in person have such a similar mindset to me, when I do go out of that like kind of comfort zone, I'm still like, wow, we have come a long way, but we have such a long way to go to make like actual significant changes. I think like in lockdown, I did go to a couple of classes of people like in London that I would never have had access to. But on the whole, it's dangerous territory and you have to really check in with yourself a lot.
I think social media can be the culprit for such like unrealistic lifestyle expectations, and you've got to follow it, and you know, you're put into a place where you're vulnerable and susceptible to these things. So as long as you navigate it, as you say, as long as you create the platform that you're consuming information a positive thing, that's brilliant. But still, it's very difficult because the algorithm is a funny thing. And in terms of, you know, understanding how to approach social media in a positive way, it does take time to learn because, as you say, you often become unintentionally naive to content. You don't realize how you're interpreting some information. You're thinking, oh, I'm going to follow this person. I'm going to, become influenced by what they're doing to motivate me. But then you have to really take a step back to realize, is this motivating or fueling a disordered mindset or a positive mindset? So it's just really trying to be honest with yourself for your progression, for your development, and, you know, to prevent any downfall, to prevent any triggers into resurfacing any unhealthy habits and things. Social media did play a huge role in my downfall towards anorexia nervosa. Pro Anna and pro bulimia content is so easily accessible. It's actually terrifying. And, I was only a young teenager, so you can just imagine how many impressionable minds are on this platform. But meanwhile, it has now played such a positive tool in connecting, in growing, in evolving. And it's like finding the healthy balance. There's certain platforms that I don't like as much as others, in the sense that, if it's very this is why I love the podcast. This is why I love talking, because you're organically connected to a conversation. Meanwhile, where it's the image dominant things, it's a lot more tricky. So it's just having the control yourself and ensuring that the social media algorithm isn't controlling and manipulating you, and you're taking that and reining it back in. And just ensuring that you're doing it for the positive reasons and engaging in the content that isn't going to be considered as triggering for your personal mental health.
Yeah, I think I agree with everyone, but I think adding to that, one thing that I wanted to mention, and it's from a podcast that I did with Luke for the Maya Minds podcast. And I know that I was speaking with Luke about how our minds work on comparison, and we compare ourselves to our social circle, and we compare ourselves to the people around us, or the people that we are associate ourselves with. And obviously for Luke, it's particularly difficult because one of the people in his social circle is Eddie Hall, who was just mentioned there, who's the world's strongest man at one stage. So even though Luke was doing stuff in the gym that most people couldn't dream of ever doing, he would be in comparison to this person who's obviously incredibly strong. And I think one of the issues with social media is it makes that social circle that you're comparing yourself to infinite. It's literally like anyone. You can always find someone on the internet who's bigger than you, stronger than you, leaner than you, whatever. There's always someone there. There's the infinite potential for you to be less than. And I also just want to point out as well, for the first part of the question that Matt asked about exercise addiction, I think often people I've been accused in the past of not liking exercise and thinking exercise is bad, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think the reason exercise is promoted so wonderfully and is an exercise addiction is sometimes ignored is because exercise is awesome. Like, exercise is great for your physical and mental health. There's so much research that shows that it is. I'm not trying to say that at all. It is fantastic. It's incredible, but that doesn't mean that we should ignore the downsides. Like, alcohol makes you feel great sometimes and you have a wonderful night, but there doesn't mean we should ignore the fact that it does some negative effects too. Same with a lot of things, and I think that's the issue is with exercise. We've as a society have chose to ignore the negative sides, or doing so without maybe some of us realizing.
I think as well on that, it's like continually reminding yourself that people are trying to sell you stuff. And it's like, they're not really like exercise and the whole fitness industry has just become the easiest way to sell stuff because it's prying on your insecurities. And so it's like, if you just continually remind yourself of that, it's like they don't really care about whether you're exercising or not. They just want to sell you this. And because they know that this is the easiest way to make you spend your money, because they are going to guilt trip you into spending that money, they're just going to do it more. It's not the fitness industry's fault. The majority of the people in the fitness industry are not in that mindset. It's just that that's how it's evolved over the years. Like, when we go to school, I personally was never taught any of the fun elements of fitness. I used to sit in the changing room in my school uniform. I didn't even get changed because I was like, I don't like this, because I was never shown what exercise was or what potential it had to make me feel certain ways. And it was like you did PE, and like PE was like, you got shown the eat well plate, and that was like it. And then you were told you need to move, otherwise you're going to put weight on. And so just like reminding yourself, they are trying to sell you things that, it's like anything. It's like with cosmetics. It's an industry that relies on you paying money.
Thank you for that. So we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to sort of open it up to any questions from people that have attended today. I know I've got one straight away from Felix, so if you'd just like to unmute yourself, that'd be class.
Yeah, hi guys, thank you very much for that. Really interesting. One thing I just sort of thought about, I'm someone who suffers basically every year with a new injury, and I also sort of use exercise as an outlet for various different things. And I was just curious, you guys have all probably suffered through various injuries. Like, how do you deal with your injuries, and how do you deal with the time where you're sort of taken away from exercise?
I feel like I'm going to nominate Luke for this, so sorry. Luke.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I've suffered quite a few injuries. Detached both biceps, triceps, abductors. Yeah, numerous injuries. It's hard. It really is hard. But one of the things with this latest injury and with lockdown and everything else is focusing on what you can do rather than what you can't do. And what we tend to do as human beings is we'll focus on, so let's say we miss a train or miss a bus or whatever by a couple of minutes, that sticks in our head more than the time that we just got to the bus on time or just got on the train just on time. And it's the same with the exercise thing. Let's say, I don't know, let's say you've torn your bicep off and you can't do upper body training, for example, for me, then focus on what you can do. So focus on your lower body, focus on the stuff that you can do, focus on your nutrition, focus on getting that right, focus on your health, or just do something completely different. Because I started to play guitar again. I started to read a book a month. Just focus on what you can do. It doesn't necessarily have to be fitness related. Just find something that you enjoy and just do that. And then also, obviously, with injuries comes the rehabilitation process. And I kind of like that because I feel like Rocky, I'm getting getting back and right, I can do 5 press ups today, or do you know what, that's 60 kilos of bench press. Yes, I've got to the top of the stairs, Adrian. So yeah, it's focusing on what you can do rather than what you can't do is the way that I would say is a healthy and positive way to deal with an injury.
I've got similar experience to that. So previously I was primarily a long distance runner. And as time went on, I realized that I was developing an injury, but because I guess over the years of disordered eating and mental health issues, I've developed this really stubborn characteristic, and I translated it into my running, and I recognized this injury and I assumed, nope, push through. And I had a half marathon that I had to do. So that I was doing. I was fundraising, so there was an obligation, and it's just like people have put in money towards this. I'm not going to say no, and also I just couldn't cope with that kind of disappointment element. So I did it. Ended up collapsing at the finish line, classy way. So that was a pretty solid signal for myself to take myself out of the running circle. But thankfully, I then thought, okay, what can I do instead? What can I do during this time to learn something new, to evolve and grow? And I know I'd always had an ambition and a passion to want to invest my time in strength training, but I never had that confidence. So what I did is got a coach for just a few weeks, just to ensure that I had the confidence to be able to step foot in that muscle pit, ensure that my form was correct. And then I very much quite quickly transitioned into strength training. I didn't want to put as much impact on my ankle, and I wanted to, I wasn't leg pressing huge amounts, so I still was easing it, but it was just my transition into evolving into a new style of training, which was exciting, and it was a learning opportunity. And so much so that I never really went back to long distance running because I love lifting, and it's just learning what you like to do and feeling empowered and feeling strong. And also it's quite nice to be inside rather than having to run a 20k in Wales, which you can kind of appreciate. It's not necessarily nice as the weather over here.
Were you chasing sheep though? That's what we all want to know.
They're not that everywhere, honestly. Like, I do live in Cardiff, so it's very much city based. Right. I grew up in a rural area, and even that it's that's such a stereotype. There are a lot, but they're not where I am.
So we've got a fair few more questions, so we'll try and be quick. If we overrun by 5 minutes, I hope that's all okay for you. So Faye, if you'd like to ask your question for me.
Hiya, yeah, thank you for speaking, guys. It's all been super interesting. I kind of wanted to build on something Luke said about you have to ask yourself, what are you doing this for? Like, who are you exercising for, and what's your goal? And I kind of wanted to ask, like, is it okay to have an aesthetic goal? Is it okay for your goal to be, I want to look like this? And if so, how can you have that goal but in a healthy way?
I think it comes down to that that positive and negative feedback loop that I was talking about before. So, if when you're doing your exercise, eating a certain way, whatever it is, and I'm not a clinical psychologist, just for the record, so please don't take what I say for absolute. Obviously, everyone's different, but I think if that loop is I do this exercise, my body changes, I like the way my body's changed, I want to do that. I think that's safer than if it's I do this exercise, my body's changed, I don't want it to change back, so I need to do this exercise to make sure it doesn't. I think often we, at least from my perspective, you attach your worth onto the fact that your body's changing, because everyone wants to compliment people on their physique changes. We don't compliment people on other things as often, but if someone loses weight or builds some muscle, everyone says, wow, this is amazing, this is so great that you're doing this, it's so amazing you're putting so much effort in. And then we start to think, oh, people like me more when I look this way, I need to keep doing this to keep looking this way, otherwise people are not going to like me. And again, it's that dependence, then it's that negative feedback loop of if I stop doing this, I'm not going to get this positive attention, I'm not going to get this stuff, so I need to do it. So it's and again, it's hard to really understand if that's what's going on, but if it's something that people listening to this are worried is going on, speak to somebody, speak to a professional counselor or a friend or whatever, and and try and figure it out, I guess, if you have that fear there.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. I'm sure we can all agree there's absolutely nothing wrong with self-improvement. But it's when that self-improvement then becomes an obsession. And like George says, that you identify with that, you become that person. Your self-worth is solely identified with you looking better, because as you look now, as you are now, you are enough. And that's it. But if you want to improve, then that's perfectly fine.
Sweet. Thank you very much. I think we should have time for one more question, if that's okay. So, Yaz, if you'd like to ask away.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for this webinar. It's been so interesting. I wanted to bring it back to something Lara mentioned, which was gym anxiety. We have anonymous polls on our social media, and a large amount of people sadly wrote that they get really anxious when they're in the gym and they don't feel comfortable. They don't necessarily know what they're doing, and there's a fear of being judged. I'm definitely guilty of that. And how would you recommend you kind of get over that and help reduce your anxiety when you are in that situation?
Gosh, initially it's terrifying. You're quite frankly, you're in an unfamiliar environment. You're not sure how to navigate. Initially, as a newbie especially, you're trying to figure yourself out, but you're also so preoccupied by other people's perceptions. But I think as time continues, you realize how, if you're in the gym, if you're focused and if you're motivated, those individuals are going to be solely focused on their training session, or, have a far better relationship with a reflection in the mirror under that downlight. But I guess initially, there is that anxiety and apprehension. And for me, what I did was get that coach just to ensure that I had those positive attributes, just ensure that I solidified this area as a safe place that allowed me to grow and evolve as a person. I've done a whole podcast episode about how to reduce gym anxiety. If you go and Keep Smiling and scroll down, I've done one specifically about it. But as long as you've just solidified your motivation and just understand that it's a progression, it's a journey, it's a process, you're not, you've got to establish these goals realistically in terms of your fitness goals, but in terms of your confidence goals and in terms of your mindset and how you kind of evaluate the situation. It's a new space, it's a new environment. It's going to take time to normalize to it. But as long as you just gradually take the steps, initially I just took a small barbell into the studio room and did like 10 kilo squats. And then gradually I was able to progress. So just giving yourself that self-compassion and understanding that I'm allowed to take these steps, but also just realizing that it is a safe place. You can reach out, you can acknowledge other people to ensure that you're, getting that confidence element. But yeah, it's just having that patience, because then when you get to that stage, when you do feel motivated and strong and empowered within that environment, there is absolutely nothing better. So it's just remembering that time will come, and it's just going to take, bit by bit. But then hopefully that momentum will speed up as your confidence and experience grows too.
Lara, can I just jump in and say, do you have any good ways of responding when someone comes up to you in the gym and tells you you're doing something wrong, or that they think you should do something differently? Because
I've not had that myself as of yet. I mean, touch wood. But I think I can appreciate how that feels, in the sense that you're trying to have this tunnel focused vision on this goal, whatever you're doing, and having somebody interrupt that mentality of when you're so focused can be quite anxiety inducing. So I think as long as you're understanding that your spectrum of motivation and you're solely doing it for this intrinsic motivation, as long as you've got that sorted, those external factors shouldn't be, so influential to you, because you're doing it for yourself. So as long as you feel safe, as long as you feel comfortable, and if somebody comes up saying that you're doing it wrong, okay, acknowledge it. They may be an inexperienced individual. If Luke came to correct my deadlift, I'd certainly take that information. So it's just taking it with your stride, but also just realizing that, quite frankly, the most important person in this situation is yourself. So just knowing that you're doing it for you, and just establishing those goals effectively for yourself, and knowing that the focus is you and not having to kind of accommodate for other people.
The best way I've found is dealing with that, and and dealing with like people on the internet as well, especially if you put up a post about nutrition, everybody's a fucking nutritionist and knows everything about nutrition, is just thanking them, saying thank you very much. I never thought of it like
Kill them
that.
with kindness.
Yeah, I'll think about that. Thank you for taking the time. And genuinely, that's it. It's done. They go away, and it's done. You don't have to get agitated or wound up or anything like that. Just nice and calm. Thank you very much. I've never thought of it like that. Thank you for taking the time, coming over and giving me that information. And if you want to under your breath now you can fuck off, then
and very typically, if they're coming up to you with this negative headspace, well, then they're not in the right frame of mind. If they're coming to the gym to give their attention to somebody else, they've got something to do themselves. They need to reevaluate their goals and their ambitions as to why they want to be in this gym environment. Is it for self-progression, or is it just to undermine people?
I think the act itself of going and correcting someone or giving someone, not always, but usually I would say that's quite an ego-driven act, because it's like, I am more intelligent or I am superior to you, so I will tell you what is wrong. Maybe not necessarily in that makes it sound like they're being very condescending. I think in some cases some people genuinely are like, I know more than you about this because you're doing it wrong and I'm going to help you, and they're trying to be kind. But I think that person is 9 times out of 10 just seeking that gratification, and whether you want to give it them or not, I think it's a lot easier just to be like, thanks for that was really, really good, so kind of you to come over. Goodbye.
I would say as well, with for the women in the gym, if a bloke comes over to you and he's correcting your form, I would say 90% of the time he's probably trying to hit on you, so I'd take it as a compliment rather than anything else, to be fair. So yeah, don't get many blokes hitting on me in the gym. On the internet, yeah, but not in the gym.
Smashing stuff. Speaker, honestly, thank you very much. That was brilliant. Everyone that attended as well, thank you very much. And yeah, I think that sort of concludes the webinar.
Go check out myminds.com.
Yeah.
So shameless.
I love how we finished on Lou getting hit on by men on Instagram, sliding into the DMs awkwardly.
Yeah.
Professionalism.
A huge thank you to Matt and Zara and Georgia, our events team, for organising this and for really putting this all together. So thank you all so much for making this happen. It's been such an incredible evening.
Woo.
Sweet.